Okay, welcome to the replay. If you're joining us here on the replay on video on YouTube or Facebook or any other fun social channels that we have access to these days, welcome to the live show. If you're here with us, thank you so much for joining us. We've got some people starting to trickle in here today as we talk a little bit about sales, using sales to help to power your sales. I'm sorry, using AI to help power your sales process. And so we'll be kicking off here. It's going to be a fun topic. We've had a lot of fun conversations about AI and how to use them in your business these days over the course of the past few months. And so this is going to be kind of the next iteration of that. I was going to say the last one, but something tells me it probably won't be the last time we talk about AI by any means. But we'll kick off here. So again, today's conversation is how to use AI to supercharge your sales process. My name is Ian Campbell, and I'm the CEO of Mission Suite. Joining me today, as always, is Dean Isaacs, who's the founder of Vantage Group, business growth strategy firm. He works with B2B companies, helping them grow predictable, profitable revenue and scale their organizations. And back in 2018, Dean launched the Growth Collaborative, which is a group consulting and mastermind program, helping B2B consultants and experts break through the revenue ceiling and generate high ticket clients month after month. So this is going to be a great conversation. I'm sure of it. As always, if you have questions along the way, do us a favor and just use the Q&A box on Zoom here so that we can make sure that we address them as they come up. Just a quick note as well. I did spend the last week with a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 6-year-old. And so, as is probably predictable, now I'm fighting something of my own. So if I had, it's entirely possible I may have to mute myself and turn off my video and whatnot. I will be back, I promise, as soon as the coughing spell goes away. Because now it's just at that lovely point of every cold where you feel great and you're fine, you sound weird, but the cough is almost gone, except for the very worst possible moment that you could have it. So yeah, so there is a possibility that I may have to shut my screen off, but like I say, I'll be back as soon as I can, if that were to happen. AI and sales. So last month we talked about marketing. We talked about content development specifically. The month before that, we talked a little bit about just kind of general overview of AI, specifically ChatGPT primarily, along with some other tools. But kind of looking back on that, we got some questions about Google's AI and the stuff that Bing is starting to do, and all these other things that are kind of coming along that have been a little under the radar, talked about as rumors and whatnot, but not really focused on by the general sensibility. So, but now we have some more information. So Dean, I thought we can start there, as you suggested earlier, and kind of talk a little bit about some of the other things that you found in AI over the course of the past couple months.
Yeah, so this whole AI landscape is growing like crazy. I mean, there are so many apps. You mentioned coughing. Excuse me. Apps and tools, but a lot of them are accessing OpenAI, which is the database, the information that ChatGPT is accessing. So the front end may look different. You can run bots and all these other things, but it's still grabbing from the same pool of information. And with Bing, they're owned by Microsoft. Microsoft put, I don't know, a few $1 billion or something, whatever it was, into ChatGPT. Yeah, it's ridiculous. So if you're using the AI tool in the Bing search engine, you're using ChatGPT. Front end, different front end, same tool. However, Google has been playing with AI for many, many, many years. And in response, I think, to the resurgence the resurgence of AI to the sort of average user, if you will, access to that, and of course, ChatGPT, they launched Bard. And so Bard is their AI engine. And so in our last month's community table, somebody asked, what's the difference? And so I hadn't played around much with Bard, but I have now. So I've got a lot more insight. So I think there are a couple of key things that if you're trying to figure out which tool to use for which use case. One of the important things to realize is that the OpenAI data, ChatGPT's data, it basically consumed all the information on the internet prior to 2021. Right, so it's like a snapshot in time. So ChatGPT 4 is their newer version of their AI, but it has the same access to that same set of data, and it cannot access websites. So if you put a URL in and said, "Tell me about this website," it can do it. It cannot access websites. But on the other side of the coin, as you might imagine, Google's AI can access the web. Google is the web, right? And so it has live access to current information and current websites. So really, depending on what you're trying to achieve, you may select one tool over the other. The other is, I find that ChatGPT is really good at summarizing this massive amount of data into an output that you can use. So if you're trying to do some industry analysis or consolidate a bunch of information, it does a really good job with that. Whereas Bard can actually go out and look at current information and provide that back. It's better at doing research, if you will, as well. So there are some subtle differences between the two. And we've got a few examples today we'll run through where I'm using ChatGPT for one thing, and I'm using Bard for something different, just to give everybody a sense of like how we can use those tools.
So if Bard has current all current information and has access to more up-to-date information, is there any situation in which ChatGPT would be better, or would Bard just always be a better tool, more reliable option?
No, well, again, it depends on the tool, right? It depends on the goal. So if you want an AI tool to process a big chunk of data and provide you a quality output, and you're providing that information, ChatGPT does a better job.
Gotcha.
So it's good at processing tasks and consolidating and summarizing. And Bard isn't as good as that at that. But Bard is really good about leveraging live data and web information and that kind of thing too. And the other thing I think is that I've tested it with similar prompts, and the language structure is different too. And so better or worse, just different, right? What do you like better? I found that ChatGPT has a better long form structure. So if you're having to put like 1,000-word blog post together, I like the Bard. I mean, I like the Chat GPT output better, but something short and concise, more maybe conversational, I like Bard. So you're going to have to test depending on your need.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And so presumably you could probably take some of the output of Bard and then drop it in Chat GPT to use them to play off one another.
Absolutely. Yeah. And maybe you're trying to solve a particular problem, trying to come up with a certain piece of information. There are different ways to skin that cat. You can use the two different tools for the same thing. So when we get into some of the content today, leveraging LinkedIn, right, in your lead research and profiling, I've used two different tools in two different ways to try and achieve a similar goal. And when we go through it, I'll explain that. But yeah, it's fascinating. It really is how these tools are different.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. Well, let's talk a little bit about sales. We've talked, when you and I were kind of getting ready for this conversation, we talked a little bit about a couple different things, one of which is a sales process, one of which is industry research, and then all the things that kind of flow from those two pieces. And this kind of makes it interesting because I feel like, especially now with the realization that Bard has real-time information, I'm curious if industry research can just be blended into the development of a sales process now without having to make that a separate step, or is that still something that would be, I would feel almost guilty to the past to the past 20 years of my life, of my professional work, saying, like skipping the industry research step and saying it's okay, I can just do that during the sales process development. But is that still, does that still need to be a separate step, you think?
I think it can be blended into the process. I wouldn't skip it. I wouldn't ignore it. but I think it can be blended into the process, because anytime you start this sort of chat stream with either of the tools, you're teaching it, you're giving it information, you're giving it background, you're giving it context. And so if you're going through a process of maybe you're pulling some profiles off of LinkedIn and trying to understand the commonalities between 3 or 4 people that you're targeting, and you're building, then you can then dig into industry trends. Then you can pull from other resources. So I think it's part of a continuum of research. Certainly you can do any of those things in isolation, but I find as you build and you train and you teach the AI, the more in context information you get. Because something that happens with all these tools is there's this concept of hallucination.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know if you've heard that term, but AI will hallucinate, which basically means it makes stuff up.
Right.
Or it makes some assumptions. And that'll happen if you don't give it enough context and enough detail, or it doesn't have access to the information that you want it to have access to. It will just make some random facts up. But if you build on that context and that information flow, you get more accurate information as well.
Interesting. Yeah, because I mean, people were saying for a long time that, AI was lying to us, right? And it's, and as far as we know, it's not capable of lying. And
No.
it's just, it's just giving, it just doesn't know. And so it just makes something up, right?
Yeah. I think lying, there's an intent. It doesn't have that level of like self-awareness yet, I guess, but it's just it's trying to give you information. It's trying to respond to your question. Now, if it's clearly out of bounds, so if you ask ChatGPT to pull some, tell me about the owner of a particular business. Who are they? What's their contact information? And it's not going to give you that.
Right.
It's not going to give you that. And it's going to tell you, sorry, I can't give you that. It's private information. But if you ask it to profile a company and it doesn't have all the information, it may start to fill in the gaps, right? And not give you fully accurate data.
Right. Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about industry research, because I mean, the first step in any sales process development is understanding where your leads are, who your leads are, and how you need to get in front of them, all those different types of things. So what are some ways that we can use some of these AI tools now to do that kind of research, to be able to identify who should I be targeting? What's the title of the person, whatever, right? I mean, all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
So I think this is where ChatGPT is really powerful. But I also, there's opportunity to do with both tools. So I'll hop back and forth, and I'll share my screen here in a minute. But, I'm a big believer in understanding the individual that you're targeting, not just the industry, right? So you could say, we sell, I don't know, accounting services to tech companies. So tech companies are our ideal client. Well, tech companies obviously is a too broad a term, but we can narrow that down. We can say tech companies of a given size in maybe a particular geography. And again, that's all good. But we're not selling to a company, we're selling to a person. And so if our primary goal is to have conversations with CFOs of mid-market tech companies based in North America doing less than 25 million in revenue, now we've got a profile we can go after, right? So then the goal would be to find CFOs that match that criteria, and then figure out a way to replicate that search. And so LinkedIn is a no-brainer. And so let me do this. Let me share my screen for everybody here, and I'll show you an example of a ChatGPT search prompt that I've used and works really, really well for this kind of process. So if we know that we've got our general criteria for the industry and we're targeting on the individuals, because we want to target individuals in terms of our messaging and our outreach and our channels, we can do that. To start with, we can start to profile and find more of these CFOs on LinkedIn. So this top section of ChatGPT is the prompt that I put in. So I said, hi, ChatGPT. I'm looking to compare several LinkedIn profiles and find the commonalities among them, because we want to find that messaging stuff, right? That's what we're trying to dig out. And ultimately, I want to create a LinkedIn Sales Navigator search, because I know there are more of those characters on LinkedIn that I want to be able to find. So can you help me profile, target profile these people? And so that kind of set the context, right? Can you please guide me through the process to provide the tips on how to identify the factors to include a sales navigator search? So really what I'm asking here is, help me refine a sales navigator search based on profiles. So the one thing to keep in mind is that ChatGPT cannot access websites. Mm-hmm. So what I cannot do is put, I don't know who this individual is. I just found 3 profiles on LinkedIn of people that match a particular criteria that I want to find more of. Mm-hmm. These are not the CFOs. It's just it's irrelevant to what the profile is. But in LinkedIn, when you go to somebody's profile, you go to the little more button right next to where it says connect and all of that, you can click on that. It opens up a little menu and you can download their profile to a PDF. And now you got a clean source to be able to copy the data from the profile. If you copy the actual LinkedIn profile, you get all random boxes and squares and pictures and icons. But if you download that profile to a PDF, you can copy the text and paste that into ChatGPT in a much cleaner format. Does that make sense? So That's exactly what I did. So profile 1, so I told it, we're going to look at these profiles. So profile 1, and I just copied all of that person's information, their about section, their experience section, profile 2, about section, summary, and so on, and then profile 3. So now ChatGPT has the information from 3 profiles that I want to summarize and understand. So ultimately, I can create a LinkedIn Sales Navigator search to find more of my people, right? So that's all of that is the profile information. So now it says, so the response is, this is ChatGPT's response to me. Thank you for providing me with the 3 LinkedIn profiles to compare these profiles and identify commonalities to create a Sales Navigator search. So it understands what I'm asking it to do. We need to analyze the job titles, summary sections, and expertise, and so on. So that's what it does. Profile 1, it summarizes it. Profile 2, it's summarized, and profile 3. So I'm teaching it, right? This is the process of teaching and allowing it to understand what we're trying to achieve. And it goes on and on and on. Now, it says, based on the above analysis, the commonalities are identified as such. So it gives me some commonalities. So I then said to it, before we create a Sales Navigator search, please do another analysis on these profiles and provide more specific commonalities. I didn't care for some of these generic things like they're all CEOs. Great. That's not enough. So I asked it to be more specific and then also look for common language used in the profiles I can use in the search. So it did this thing again. So it went through and it did another analysis. Gave me some more output. And then I said, okay, and I felt like, all right, that was better. I was getting closer to the information I needed. And I asked it, now please create a Sales Navigator search to give us the most targeted results possible based on your analysis. And so here's what it did. It gave me an output. These are search criteria that you can drop directly into LinkedIn Sales Navigator. And they weren't great. I got to say, they weren't great. They're pretty generic. Mm-hmm. So I said, all right, please provide another Sales Navigator search, including the additional criteria you mentioned above. Because it kind of went too generic for me. And then it came back with something way more usable. So specific keywords. So when you create a LinkedIn Sales Navigator search, you don't have to just search on a role or a title. You can actually use keywords in somebody's profile. Specific industries that we're targeting. So we talked about industry research. The individual's experience, location, and so on. You can read those things. So now it was a bit better. So then I went on and said, all right, so if you think of these tools as your tireless intern, right? You can keep asking questions. They never get mad at you. Just keep going. Just keep digging until you feel like you've got enough information. So what I then said was, what else should I add to the filters to improve the search results? And it gave me some more things like including certain skills in my search. What about groups, education? And so we keep on rolling down. I say, all right, now combine all this stuff again. And as you can tell, there's more detail in the search criteria the third time around than the first. And now I've got to the point where I feel like, okay, I feel pretty good about that. I can probably use that, drop it into Sales Navigator and see what kind of results I get. And then I went on to ask it some other questions, which it doesn't really matter, but that's a good place to start to do industry research and profiling on LinkedIn.
Interesting. Interesting. So, and I find the just looking at the question that you asked after this one, when you asked it how you should talk to it, is kind of an interesting thing too, because that's going to really, because I mean, the diving in on the Sales Navigator search is huge, right? And that's something that we can do. I mean, is there anything outside of Sales Navigator that we should be looking at in association with this?
Yeah, so there is. So yeah, so this is a great place to start, right? To find your people you're going to market to. What you can also do, and I didn't do it in this particular chat stream, was to ask it for what are the 3 most common pain points of this type of individual or this type of company. And it's going to start, it may give you some generic responses to start with, but you can continue to dig in. Let me hop over to Bard.
Okay.
And I did a similar process there, but I went a little further as well. So with Bard, different user interface, but nonetheless, this is Bard. And so I wanted to start to do some industry research. So when you do industry research, you do competitive analysis. It's a very similar process, right? You're trying to understand the nuances of a particular market and particular companies that play in that market, whether you're using them to position against or sell to. The process is very similar. And so what I did was I started with my website just for grins, right? Just to kind of start at a high level and work our way down. So my first prompt for Bard was, what are the primary traffic sources for this website? So let's put it in context for our listeners today. If you're doing industry research and you want to get in front of these people, where are people finding these companies? How are they interacting with them? What are the search terms that people are using to find those companies? That's helpful for you to know, to be able to get in front of them as well. So I wanted to know, in my case, again, using my URL, what are my primary traffic sources for this website, my website? Now, again, if you're using this to do competitive analysis, now you know you can learn what is your marketing, what marketing is working for your competitors you might be able to leverage as well.
So right? This doesn't mean, this can get you access to a lot of, I mean, seemingly proprietary information too.
Yeah, remember, this is Google.
Right.
And Google owns the web.
Right.
They know about search traffic. They know about keywords. They know about all of this stuff. And so that's where I started. Just tell me what the primary traffic sources are for my website. So almost 44% come directly to my site. So that means they're using my domain name, right? They're going right to my domain name. That's awesome. That tells me people know my brand. They're searching for the brand. Okay, cool. So if I'm doing competitive analysis, for example, are my potential prospects going to my competitor site using their brand? If their direct traffic number is low and their organic is high, it means their SEO is probably working well. They're searching for key terms. So in my case, you know, a little over a third of my traffic comes from organic search. And so for our audience, that means people are putting search terms in, just putting terms into Google and searching for marketing, for whatever, right? And they're landing on my site. That's what organic means. And then referral traffic in this particular case is, well, other sites are pointing people to my website. So are they clicking on links on LinkedIn to get to my site? So for me, those are my 3 primary traffic sources. But would that be interesting to know about your competition? Would that be interesting to know about your target audience? Especially if you happen to be in the marketing space and that's what you sell. Right. But that's another whole story. So, and then it gives me this whole sort of narrative around direct traffic and organic and referral and social and so on. All good information. Down to the point where it's saying this traffic source accounts for 2.3% of all my traffic on my website. I mean, it knows what it's looking at. So then I went in to say, so again, if I'm doing competitive analysis, or if I'm doing industry research, you would phrase the question differently. But what I asked was, what are 10 FAQs visitors to my website are likely to ask based on the content? For two reasons. I want to be able to answer those questions, right? So if somebody comes to my website and they ask these questions, there's a high likelihood when I'm in sales mode and I'm talking to a prospect, they're probably going to ask these questions of me. So it helps you be more prepared for your sales conversations. So it gave me 10 things. Some of these are very generic, like what is Vantage Group? Well, it's kind of that's kind of a throwaway, right? But there are some interesting insights there. How much does it cost? What is the process I work with? Do I have guarantees? These are things that we hear when we are having a sales conversation. So we can prepare, we can either provide that information on our website or be proactive in the sales conversation. And it gave me some very, sort of general responses based on my website content. Mm-hmm. And so I took the conversation one step further and said, what are the organic search keywords driving traffic? And these 10 are my primary organic keywords. So these are keywords that are on my website that are driving traffic. So again, if you're doing competitive analysis, you're doing industry analysis, you're doing market research, how important are these?
Yeah.
Hugely important, right?
Yeah.
For a variety of different reasons. So that's the beauty of Bard, is that it has access to the internet today, right now. Mm. And of course, it's part of Google, so it's going to give you all of that information as well. And then it gave me just a little more narrative at the bottom. So I know I just throw a whole bunch of information at everyone here, but just this sort of stream of consciousness can be utilized in so many ways. And I just scratched it. So this was 5 minutes of playing around with Bard on just getting some feedback on my website.
And, looking at this from an industry research standpoint, this is kind of like you mentioned before, this is something that you can take your 5 best clients and say, hey, listen, Bard, these are the 5 best clients that I have. These are the websites. This is the information that I want to know about them. And then take that information over to ChatGPT and have it really kind of come up with your ideal target persona, and then use that information to create LinkedIn searches, right?
Totally, yeah. What I would do exactly what you just described. And then once I've got a really clear sense of that, I would go to ChatGPT and say, what are the 5 most common challenges for owners of SaaS companies around growth, around employees, around whatever it is that you do? And so it knows who you're looking at, and it's going to go find information on the web of what people are complaining. What are the pain points, right? It's not making up information. It's consolidating all of that data from the web. Uh-huh. Now you've got pain points. Then you could ask ChatGPT to say, okay, let's take one at a time. What should my messaging sequence be? I do this thing. This is the service I provide. I provide it to these people. This is the pain point. What should my introductory email say? And it will script it out. That's one of the things actually that Bard does really, really well. I think it's on my next tab here. Again, Bard, because it has access to the web. I went through the LinkedIn profile process with Bard, but what I did differently, it was kind of funny. I said, please summarize the commonalities of 3 LinkedIn profiles to help me determine what my outreach messaging should be. And I hit enter, and I didn't mean to. Yeah. And it gave me some information that is completely hallucination. It doesn't know what profiles or anything. It just gave me this generic stuff. So I said, hang on a minute. Here are the actual 3 profiles I would like you to look at. And so here's the difference, right? What did I do in ChatGPT? Let me roll all the way up. I had to get all of that data, that content from profiles, and drop it in to ChatGPT. But Bard, because it has access to websites, I just dropped in the links, the URLs. Now, these are just 3 random people that are at the top of my list of connections on LinkedIn. There's no commonality amongst these individuals, but nonetheless. So now it understands that's my question, and here's my source data, right? And it was able to go out and look at Steve, Kerry, and Tanika. And I confirmed it didn't make this stuff up. This is correct. It actually has access to those web pages. And then it says, based on these commonalities, I would recommend you focus your outreach messaging on the following areas. Highlighting your skills and experience, pretty generic. Personalize your messaging. Well, yeah, not very helpful, right? Here are additional tips for writing effective outreach messages. So it gave me some tips. Okay, very good.
Right.
So I said, now create an email template I can use to introduce myself and my services listed here. So I dropped my URL from my services page on my website. So I'm trying to see, I'm testing the tool, right? And I'm also seeing if it's doing anything that's worthwhile. And it did. Okay. So here's a template. Dear name, hope this email finds you well. My name is, I'm the founder of, blah, blah, blah. Here are some of the things that I may have mentioned on my website, things that we do. And then it talks about my proven track record. Awesome, awesome. So it gave me a template. Is this perfect? Not even close. But it's a place to build from.
No.
There's nothing worse than sitting down and having to write copy or an email script from a blank screen. This is going to give you a lot of boost. So I wasn't overly excited about the results. So I said, okay, now rewrite this thing based on my LinkedIn profile. And so it did. It went through it. It changed some of the copy. Some of the, stats are the same, right? I use the same stats on my website, my LinkedIn profile. I expected that. It reordered it a little bit and it was okay. And so I said, now rewrite the email focusing on the pain points of my target profiles, because it's a lot about me, right? Features. Yeah. Who cares about features? It's about the pain you solve. And so it did. It came up with something a little better. Writing to you because I've been following you for some time. Now, this was really not ideal. Pain point 1, 2, and 3. It didn't give me the pain points. It gave me a place to insert the pain points.
Right.
But if we've done the research on ChatGPT before, we've already defined those things. The other thing I thought was really interesting was that it gave me 3 different drafts. So Bard is not saying, here's my one response. It's saying, here's draft 1. If you don't like that, here's draft 2, here's draft 3. And you can actually regenerate drafts. It's not super fast, but it will actually give you more options. And then you can view other drafts. And so you can have it sort of iterate and iterate and iterate. And you can do that by feeding it more information too. So I know I went down a whole rabbit trail there, but we started talking about messaging. So if you've done your industry research, you've done your profiling of the roles of the people you're targeting, and you understand their common pain points, you can have either of these tools start to pull messaging together. And if you want to access a website as a resource, you can do that with Bard.
Right.
So there's a lot more we can talk about in terms of messaging, but this kind of hopefully gives our folks a sense of like, these are some of the things that we can do just to experiment and build on just coming up with stuff from scratch, which you just don't have to do anymore.
Yeah. So since Bard has access to the internet, we've talked about social selling a lot before, right? Where, social selling used to be talking about the fish on the wall or the golf clubs in the corner. And now, excuse me, because of all the information that we have access to, we can be more specific and more personal and whatnot. Can Bard do more contact research on people to help us figure out commonalities that we have that we might be able to connect on in a deeper way?
Yeah, I think it's like the ultimate stalker tool, right? I mean, you can stalk somebody like crazy with this thing. You could drop in their Facebook profile, their Instagram, and there may be, I haven't played with all the social platforms and Bard's access to them, but based on just on a quick experiment with my LinkedIn profile, yeah, you can put all kinds of resources in there and ask it to summarize, to refine, to create a list of, and it will do that for you. Right. And you can even compare, let's say you're very active on Facebook and this person's very active on Facebook, put them both in and ask them to compare commonalities and interests.
Yeah.
And it will do that for you.
Things like,
scary.
Yeah, it's very, for sure. But, things like finding out where so-and-so went to college and then saying, look for John Smith, who graduated from Vanderbilt University in 1975, and find all of the things that all the clubs that he was in that you can have that like stuff like that. I mean, you can really go in depth with this now. And I mean, again, it can be used for good or evil, I suppose, but
Yeah, it
yeah,
can.
I mean, it can, but it can also be something that can be really helpful and be really focused and specific to, if you know how to use it right, and don't do the whole, like subject line, hey, I see you have a kid. I mean, that gets, yeah.
Yeah, that's not going to help you. Yeah, I think that like with many of these tools, it's just a tool. If you have a real good sense of what you're trying to achieve, what your goal is, if the goal is to come up with a very personalized email sequence for a particular persona, right? It will do that really well. If you want to take it to that next level and come up with a personalized email sequence for an individual, it can do that too, right?
Yeah.
How scalable is that? Well, I mean, if you have to search each individual, that's fine. If that's kind of your market, that's cool. But if you want to get to that 80% personalized, which is more around the persona, the role, and the industry and all of those things, that's probably adequate. And then you can have it, a lot of my outputs here are just in this is a template, obviously, but in lists or summarize, have it drop it into a table format, tell it, provide the response in a table.
Right.
And then you can copy that, drop it into a spreadsheet. You can actually have it output into a website. It's not a website. I'm sorry, an Excel spreadsheet or a Google Sheets. There are lots of plugins for your Chrome browser that will automatically get that data. It will use, let's say, ChatGPT in the back end, but on the front end, it's going to populate a Google Sheet for you. Yeah. So it's more usable data. It doesn't have to be just text-based.
Sure. That's wild. Now, we talked a little bit about, you mentioned the cold emails. What about phone scripts because I mean, if we're dealing with a large sales team, for example, they're even a small sales team of 3 to 5 people, you want everybody kind of saying the same thing, right? I mean, I don't know, have you done anything with phone scripts on this or?
Yeah, so I've used it to scripts, whether it's a phone script, an email script, a LinkedIn messaging sequence, it's all the same type of process. So, and you literally, once it knows your target audience, it understands your selling messages, what are your differentiators, and you can do that by just giving it your URL, right?
Yeah.
Or you can upload if you've got an FAQ sheet or a one-pager, just drop that into ChatGPT, and that's the base information it can use. Mm-hmm. And then just literally ask it directly and specifically what you want. Another thing you can do is, let's say you've got 2 superstar salespeople, and they just crush it on discovery calls, right? They're really, really good. A lot of times companies will record those calls, get the written transcript of those calls, drop those into ChatGPT, and ask it to find the common characteristics, the key phrases, the whatever you're looking for, and it will do that. It will process that data really well. So you're like, okay, so there are three questions that get the longest response. Sometimes when a prospect talks longer, that means you've really got them, right? Sure. Got them interested. So you can ask it that. What 3 questions get the longest response? That might be really interesting information to have. Or how you give me 3 statements that result in a positive response from the prospect. So, it just depends on what type of information you're mining. So you can have it come up with a script from base information, like who your audience is and what their needs are and what you do, or you can feed it with your data set, could be transcripts, and have it process and come up with information from that perspective too.
Yeah, that's something. That's something I wouldn't have thought about, is actually loading up. I mean, because you can get transcripts done using Otter, and just drop that information all in, and that's a whole new set of information that you can leverage.
Yeah, you can even have it pull out all the questions,
right,
out of a 30-minute call. And so those questions could be, you would have to probably go through them because it doesn't know who said what necessarily. But well, I say that if you use a tool like a Fathom or an Otter, it will break up who said what in the written transcript. So you can ask it to break it up by participant.
Right.
And it will give you all the questions that the prospect asked your salesperson.
Yeah.
Then we can do that over a number of calls and understand what do we need to be proactive in selling and talking to and overcoming. And a sales objection is usually just a question that's gone unanswered.
Right.
Right. It comes up as I can't buy from you because, but usually it's something that the salesperson hasn't proactively answered. So let's figure out what your prospects ask over and over again. Use a tool, an AI tool to do that.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's amazing. So another interesting thing that we talked about before was actually role playing and using ChatGPT, or maybe not Bard, as somebody to role play with.
Yeah. So I don't have an example I can show you, but the process I've seen work and I've started to play with is, again, with these tools, it's all about context. So again, if you've trained it on the type of individual that is your prospect, you can tell it, let's role play. Here are 3 questions that I ask in my discovery call, and ask it to respond and go back and forth. And you'll quickly see where are the gaps. Now, it's going to be probably 60%, 70% accurate.
Sure.
But that's still pretty good, right? And a lot of times it will come up with things. What I've seen is it comes up with different perspectives that we wouldn't have come up with just sort of sitting around the conference room.
Right.
So role play with giving you feedback to questions. Give it a statement, like your value prop, if you will, and have it provide feedback to you. What other questions do you have? What did I not answer? What concerns do you have? What objections come up from this? And it will actually role play with you pretty well. It's kind of crazy, really.
Yeah, that's wild. And I mean, another thing to keep in mind, something that's, I think it's important to make sure that we kind of reiterate, is that as we're talking about training the AI system, we're talking about inside of each chat, right?
Correct.
So it's not just because you're logged into ChatGPT or because you're logged into Google, it's not going to remember all the things that you've talked about over the course of 10 different chats where it's always been a new chat. So as you go about training the system, you've got to, if you wanted to use something like the role playing, for example, right, you would have to go through and maybe do 5 or 6 different prompts to kind of teach the system who it's supposed to be working as, right?
Yeah, that's a really good point. It has amnesia, right? Every time it goes to sleep, it forgets about what. So yeah, you want to always retrain it. So a couple of things I do is I have a Google sheet that I save a lot of my prompts in, so I can go back to them, right? Because you can go through ChatGPT and you look through the feed, but it's not always great to do that, especially when you use it a lot. The other thing I do is I use a Google Doc for training purposes. So if I've gone through this whole learning process and I've come up with this profile at the end of my session, and ChatGPT clearly knows who I'm talking to and what it's all about, I just copy that.
Right.
Put it into a Google Doc. And then when I start a new chat, I'll remind it, okay, here's what we're doing. Here's what we're doing. Here's who you're doing it with. And here's what, just remind it of all those things. And you can, in a couple of quick prompts and getting feedback, you can get pretty close. And the other thing I often ask is, before we do this thing, whatever that thing is you've asked it to do you have any clarifying questions? And so that's a little pro tip for you there, right? It will help you. Yeah. And it will say, tell me more about this or tell me more about that.
Wow. That's a next level kind of a thing. That's huge though. Cause I mean, that's what we ask people before we, when we task them with something, right? That's what we say. Hey, what kind of questions do you have before you jump in on this? And it's just changing our mindset to also know that we have to ask it of a computer is a different deal, right?
Yeah. And then one other kind of little pro tip along those lines is if you're not quite sure what prompt to use, but you kind of know what you're trying to do, just ask it. What prompt should I use to get you to help me to do this thing.
Right.
And it will tell you what prompt to use. It will give you the words it needs to hear to do the thing you want it to do.
Right. So, and that goes back to the ChatGPT screenshot that we were doing before, where you wrapped it. It looked like you were wrapping up a session with ChatGPT by saying how should I word a prompt that will will basically save time, right? I mean, get this information right off the top of the
Yeah,
bat.
because I had to clarify, I had to dig a little deeper, I had to redirect a little bit. Once it's done all that, yeah, just ask it in the future. I think that's exactly what I asked, right? What prompt should I use in the future to get this result?
Right.
And it gave it to me.
Wow. Have you tested that? Have you tested that prompt separately?
Yeah, I have it, and it's better than my original prompt, and it didn't take as much iteration. But you know, it's a learning for us. You know, they call this prompt engineering. Right. Fancy term, whatever that means. It means that we're still trying to figure out how to best utilize the tool. And ChatGPT is learning constantly, right? It's learning by all the data it's being fed. So this is sort of like environment that consistently changes. So as soon as I feel like I've got a prompt dialed in, something's changed, right? It's got access to different information, or it's gone from 3.5 to 4.0. And so I like to do those sort of confirming questions at the end, or clarifying. Do you have any more clarifying questions? Because it invariably improves the results. And so that's all we can do, is just continue to sort of iterate as we go.
Very cool. Going back to the leads conversation, Carlos has a question here about how to use AI to generate leads lists outside of LinkedIn, and just by simply crawling the web. Is that, I guess, you know, if we were to, you know, to your point about, you know, we're selling to the individual, not the company, right? I mean, I guess you can start by going to, whether it's ChatGPT, because ChatGPT will give you a list of companies that are, you know, that fit this criteria, right? But they're just called the websites for them. Right.
Yeah. So, you know, all these lists are published all over the web. So that's kind of the information it gets. It will typically not give you contact information. As that's sort of quote private, right? But it will give you a list. It'll give you company names. Right. And I think and no one of these tools works to perfection in a silo. So if you're using like a Lead Fuse or a Zoom Info or whatever, you can use ChatGPT or even Bard perhaps to create your profile, the characteristics, the nuances, even a list of companies. Then you can drop those into Lead Fuse and get the contact info. Right. So using a couple of tools that way will work really well. And ChatGPT just opened up their like app store. So there's a lot of Chrome plugins, and there's a lot of like extensions that will allow you to tie things together as well. Right. So neither of the tools they're not going to give you a full like contact database, right? They're just not going to give it to you. Bard may have a little more access to some of that information, but it's not going to probably give you private information. But that's how I would go about it. It's probably a couple of steps in that process.
Right. Interesting. Okay. So yeah, so it sounds like just to kind of give Carlos a process as an example, right? So going to because I mean, if you're developing a leads list, ideally you probably want the content, the company itself, and then the contact name, you know, all that sort of stuff, right? But you'll probably also want to know a little bit more about the company that you're dealing with too, to be better able to identify that. So starting with ChatGPT to create the list, sending that into Bard to say, analyze the websites of these companies, kind of do what you were doing with your website, and then going back over to ChatGPT and say, okay, so now that I have all this information, give me, you know, or I mean, even going to I guess even going to Lead Fuse, finding all the contacts for those companies, dropping those into Bard, tell me more about these people. I mean, you can actually go through that process and really build the whole thing out. Yeah,
I'm literally in Bard right now, trying it out as we speak to see if we can get it. So what I asked it, I used the chat where I went in and looked at my website and all of those things, right? And now the first thing I asked was, this is a really generic prompt, not a good prompt, but a prompt nonetheless. I said, okay, let me just, share my screen. We'll go live again.
Perfect.
If I can find the right tab. I have way too many tabs open. Here we go. Okay. So I took this search stream, right? Because it's been trained on this information. It kind of knows what I'm about, and it knows kind of what services I provide. And I said, again, really generic, can you provide a list of companies based in Colorado that may be interested in my services? And it pulled this random list. I didn't give it any criteria about industry or size. I mean, we're looking at Dish Network, and these are big companies.
Right.
Other box, they're not my targets. So let's do this. Let's just for grins, let's assume that I'm working with these types of companies. Now provide the VP of Sales contact information, including email and phone number. I have no idea what this is going to do. If it's going to tell me, sorry, I spelled number wrong, but it knows what I mean. It's thinking. Yeah, so it basically said, can't do it. I'm a large language model, don't have access to that information. Interesting. Go to Google. Go do a quick Google search. So now it's pushing me specifically to do a Google search to do that research. Interesting. Yeah. Or you can go to social media. So yeah, there are limitations. There are limitations for sure.
So you can't say Ian Campbell is the CEO of Mission Suite, find me a cell phone number.
I don't know, fine. Phone. I'm guessing it's going to say no.
Right.
Yeah, okay. See, again, it's going to push you back and say, yeah, this is not going to provide that proprietary or private information.
Right.
Yeah.
That's, it kind of goes to Carlos's next question of, will we one day be able to just give the bot login information to ZoomInfo or LeadFuse or wherever and just let it work its magic, right? Let it do its thing.
Probably. Yeah. I mean, if it's kind of doing that now with LinkedIn to a more general level,
yeah,
without a login, I'm just giving it a URL to somebody's profile or just say, go check out LinkedIn. It's coming. It's coming. And I think what we'll see is these plugins and these add-ons and these sort of extensions of the tool are going to allow us to get around some of the restrictions that are self-imposed by Bard and ChatGPT. There are going to be some folks that have figured out a way to access that data, assuming that it's been consumed by these AIs. Yeah. So I have no doubt. I mean, we are in the infancy of these tools, but even with that being said, how much can we already do? It's crazy.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So the last thing here to kind of just touch on is actually building out that sales process, right? I mean, that's something that presumably if you actually, I mean, I doubt that Salesforce, for example, has its sales process posted up to the web somewhere for consumption by a model like this. But, if you were to say, create me a sales process for a software as a service company that's selling CRM software and is competing against Salesforce and HubSpot and so on and so on and so on, that it could probably do a pretty darn good job.
Yeah, and it will start. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll share screen again. I actually started playing around with that exact prompt. So I'm using fairly generic examples here. Sales consultant, preparing to present to a group of business owners on blah, 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 how to improve their sales process and results. So I asked it, do you understand my request? It said, I do. Here are some clarifying questions. I asked it about clarifying questions. I responded with those. And now it starts to build out the sales process. So personalize your prospect outreach, qualify your leads, sales training and coaching. So it breaks it all down, kind of generic. And so I asked it, these are all great topics, but please now add more detail for each topic, including specific steps so they can take action. So now it's like, all right, how do you do this thing? Personalize your prospect outreach. Step 1, step 2, step 3. Still fairly generic, but if you're looking just for a framework, this isn't a bad place to start. And so it gives me all of these individual steps. Now, please add how to do each one, right? Now you've told me what to do. Now I need to know how to do them. So it gives a little more detail again. Again, it's this iterative prompting, right?
Yep.
Now, for each step in the process of how to complete each step, for example, how would one use ChatGPT to create a customized messaging template? And it goes through it, it starts to break it down a little bit. Again, so generic, right?
Right.
My prompts weren't the most eloquent, but I think it kind of gives you a sense of there's a lot of content there. Now we know, here's how we sort of need to think about our sales training and coaching for our sales team. It's a good place to sort of build from.
Yeah. Wow.
The more detailed and the more specific, the better response.
Yep.
I'll say that over and over again. Otherwise, you will get these really generic responses that are,
yeah,
it's not always perfect. I would say the last thing on the list is if you have information, if you have a document or you have notes, drop it in there and have it utilize that information as well. Then it feels more custom to your world. Right. I had a couple of pages of notes from a prospect, and I was working on putting a proposal together. And so what I had it do is take all of my notes and summarize it into sort of a scope outline. And it did pretty good. And it sounded like me because it was my notes.
Right.
So anytime you can use your information as source data, you get a lot better results.
Right. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. Tell you, if there's one thing, I mean, if there's one thing to learn from all this is that, I mean, it's gonna get easier and easier and easier to do this, which means that there are going to be more and more and more people out there trying to get it done, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
We've always, I feel like as business owners, we've always kind of rested on the concept of if it was easy, then everybody would be doing it, right? Well, now it's getting easier. And so we're going to end up with more competition, but, kind of reiterating a point that you've made in the past is that it's going to make the good better and the bad worse, right?
It is. Yeah, it is. And I would tell everybody that's listening, never just copy and paste the result, right? If you're working on marketing content or a script, or this is a place to build from. The information you get from these tools is a place to build from. It has to be from you. It has to feel like it's from you. It has to have your voice and your nuance. It's never going to be able to define your target audience completely without your input.
Right.
So it's the results will continue to get better, but don't be lazy. Put a lazy prompt in, copy a lazy response and hope that's going to get you where you need to be. It won't. It's just a tool.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. It's got to be used. So,
yep.
Awesome. Well, that's certainly a lot to digest. And you as you said, you mentioned the one thing, the big thing to take away, just make sure that you're actually spending time with this, right? That it's not just don't go the other way. Don't be lazy with it, but it still requires a little bit of work. It's just easier work.
It is. You should never have writer's block. You should never be stuck anymore. It gets you unstuck in all kinds of situations. And if that's all you use it for, then it's worth the price of admission.
That's it.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, with that, we can wrap up here, and thank you for the enlightenment. And it was fun going to see Bart. I've got to activate it on my my Google admin account, I guess, so I can go play around with it. But yeah, it's exciting stuff. And so everybody who's here with us today, thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you next time around. Cheers all.